Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome aboard Nautical Me. Today's live briefing at the helm covers the finest hours and asks the question, what would you have done? Today we are going to Cape Cod, February 18th, 1952. A violent winter storm is hammering New England. Snow is blowing sideways. Visibility is collapsing. And offshore, not one, but two 500-foot oil tankers have broken in half. One is the Fort Mercer. The other is the Pendleton. And the Pendleton has a particularly terrifying problem. Nobody ashore initially knows she is in trouble. Her radio room is gone. She cannot send an SOS. A Coast Guard aircraft happens to find her broken stern section near Chatham. And that discovery sets in motion the event that inspired the movie The Finest Hours. But today, I don't want to talk about the movie. I want to put you at the helm. The situation. The Pendleton was a 502-foot T2 tanker, a type of mass-produced during World War II. In the storm, she broke in two. 33 men survived aboard the stern section. They had no conventional means of calling for help. Meanwhile, the Coast Guard was already heavily committed to the Fort Mercer, another T2 tanker that had also broken apart. Ultimately, Coast Guard crews rescued 70 people from aboard the two tankers combined. Think about that for a moment. This was not a ship is sinking, go rescue it. It was two enormous ships have broken apart in a violent winter storm. We don't entirely know who is where, and resources are already committed. That is a completely different decision problem. The four-man boat. At Coast Guard Station Chatham, boatswain's mate, first class Bernard Bernie Weber, is ordered to form another crew. His crew becomes Bernie Weber as coxswain, again Bernie Weber as coxswain, Andrew Fitzgerald engineer, Richard Livesey as seaman, and Irvin Mask seaman. Their rescue boat, the CG36500, a 36-foot motor lifeboat, not a cutter, not a destroyer, 36 feet. And they were about to take it through one of the most dangerous places on Cape Cod, the Chatham Bar. Decision number one. Here is your first at the helm challenge. You have a 36-foot motor lifeboat. You're in darkness with snow squalls, winds around 40 to 50 miles per hour, extraordinarily heavy seas, a dangerous breaking bar ahead, incomplete information about the casualty, and you know that another rescue operation is already underway. Now what, Captain? A, go. The possibility of survivors outweighs the risk. B, wait. Hold until conditions improve or more information becomes available. Or C, find another approach. Try to coordinate a larger vessel, aircraft, or alternative rescue method. No bravado. Think like a skipper. Judgment, responsibility, stewardship. The bar. Weber gets underway at about 5:55 p.m. It is already dark. Then comes the Chatham Bar. The first huge sea picks the CG36500 up, turns it around, and throws it back towards the harbor. Then another catastrophe. The compass is ripped from its mouth. The windshield is smashed. Now they are entering the Atlantic in darkness and snow without a compass. This may be the most important part of the story itself, because heroism is easy to celebrate afterward, but at this moment, the crew does not know whether the next decision is heroic or fatal. Now for the nautical term of the week, which is bar. A bar is a shallow area of sand or sediment near a harbor entrance or river mouth. When offshore seas encounter that shallower water, they can become steeper and break violently upon the bar. That is why bars can turn an already difficult sea state into something far more dangerous. The Chatham Bar was not merely something Weber had to cross on his way offshore, it was itself one of the major hazards of the mission. So, how do you navigate without your compass? This is where the story becomes almost unbelievable. Weber keeps going. The boat climbs enormous seas and then races down their backs. He sometimes has to reverse the engine while descending a wave so the bow does not bury itself into the next sea. Meanwhile, Fitzgerald repeatedly has to restart the engine when it loses its prime, working in brutal conditions below decks. Eventually, Weber hears something. Not a radio call, not a horn, a tremendous metallic rumbling, crashing, and banging. And then the searchlight catches something enormous. The stern of the Pendleton. They actually found her. At the helm, decision number 2. Now imagine that you are Weber. You found the tanker. The stern section is towering above your 36-foot boat. It is rolling violently. There are dozens of men aboard. Your boat is not designed to carry anything remotely like that many people. Now what, Captain? A. Take as many as the rated capacity permits and leave. B. Take everyone you possibly can. C. Remove a smaller group, return to shore, then attempt another trip. This is where seamanship becomes something much bigger than boat handling. It becomes a question of risk concentration. How much additional risk do you accept in order to avoid leaving somebody behind? 32 men. Weber begins maneuvering beneath the Pendleton. The tanker is rolling. The lifeboat darts in and out. Men come down a Jacob's ladder. Some are thrown violently against the ship's sides as the tanker rolls. There were 33 survivors aboard the stern. The Coast Guard boat ultimately took aboard 32 of them. One man was lost during the transfer. Now do the arithmetic conceptually. 4 Coast Guard men, 32 rescued merchant sailors, 36 people aboard a 36-foot lifeboat, and they still have to get home. The most beautiful red light on Cape Cod. They leave the Pendleton, but remember, no compass, 0 visibility, overloaded boat, night, snow, and somewhere ahead, the Chatham Bar. Weber chooses a direction and keeps going. Then the crew sees something, a tiny red light, a buoy. It marks the inside of the Chatham Bar and the turn towards the old harbor. Weber later described that little red light as extraordinarily beautiful. That buoy meant position, orientation, home. There is a beautiful seamanship lesson here. Sometimes the most valuable navigational information in the world is not sophisticated. It is simply the right signal at the right moment. The gold medal crew. Weber, Fitzgerald, Livesey, and Mask returned safely to the Chatham Fish Pier with the 32 survivors. All 4 Coast Guard guardsmen subsequently received the gold life-saving medal. The Coast Guard still describes their mission as the greatest small boat rescue in its history. And that is the real event behind the movie The Finest Hours. What the movie can't quite teach us. For me, the lesson is not be fearless, quite the opposite. Good seamanship is really about being fearless. It is about making decisions while fully understanding what there is to fear. Weber's crew had incomplete information, degraded navigation, mechanical problems, terrible visibility, extreme sea conditions, an overloaded boat, no certainty of success, and again, no compass. And they kept solving the next problem, not the entire rescue, the next problem. Cross the bar, keep the engine running, find the ship, get alongside, get the men aboard, find the way home. That is a powerful mental model far beyond this particular rescue. So, our final crew vote for this At the Helm live Thursday briefing is this question: which was Weber's most important decision? A, crossing the Chatham Bar. Without that decision, there is no rescue. B, continuing after losing the compass. That is the moment when the original plan effectively disappears. Or C, taking all 32 survivors aboard. That transfers the mission from rescue attempt into extraordinary risk. Reply in the comments A, B, or C, and one sentence why you believe you chose what you chose. And there's one more thing to think about. The movie, which is really fabulous and can be seen on Disney Plus, gives us a hero. The real event gives us a system, the aircraft crew that found the Pendleton, the Coast Guard station, the boat crew, the rescuers working the Fort Mercer, the merchant sailors helping one another aboard the tanker, the buoy that finally gave Weber his position. That is nautical life at its best. Crew, judgment, responsibility, seamanship. Not one person operating alone. So, this Thursday, when you think about the finest hours, don't begin with Hollywood. Begin with a 36-foot lifeboat leaving the Chatham in the dark. Think about the compass being torn away. Think about 32 men climbing aboard in freezing February 1952 conditions. And think about that tiny red buoy emerging through the snow. Sometimes seamanship is knowing exactly where you are. Sometimes it is having the judgment to keep going when you don't know. Until next time, keep your heading true and your curiosity even sharper. And thanks so very much. Now you can see the CG36500 if you go to Rock Harbor in the town of Orleans here on Cape Cod, and you will see her floating next to the wharf. And usually there's a docent nearby or on board to answer your questions and tell you the details of this lifecraft vessel. It's really a great ship that's been refurbished and is on her last legs in terms of working lifespan, but they hope to take the boat and place it in some well-established safety area with great visibility for tourists into the future. And my sources for this live briefing, the core history here comes from the U.S. Coast Guard Historian's Office account of Weber and the CG36500, the Coast Guard's Gold Life-Saving Medal record, and the Cape Cod National Seashore account of the Pendleton Fort Mercer disaster. Until next Thursday, have a great week and enjoy your summer.